They put my sick mother's house in their name while she was lying in a hospital bed, barely able to sit up. They smiled, told me it was for convenience, and thought I wouldn't notice until it was done. I didn't take them to court. I took the deed back the same way they stole it on paper, in daylight, and with receipts. I'm not using real names. I'm 33, single. I live 15 minutes from my mom. She's 75, a retired school librarian, organized to the point of labeling the backs of remote controls. I'm the kid who stayed close. My older brother, call him Evan, moved 2 states away and became a professional golden boy on social media. His wife, Claire, is charming in a way that makes you want to check your pockets after she hugs you. Mom's health slipped this year. A fib scares, dizzy spells, one bad fall. I started keeping a go bag by the door, charger, toothbrush, compression socks, crackers. When she landed in the hospital in March, I slept in a vinyl chair for 3 nights straight. I honestly thought that was the worst part. I was wrong. On day 4, I ran to Mom's house to shower. The living room was tidy, the kitchen spotless, the way she likes it. But in her office, the locked file cabinet wasn't locked. It was cracked open an inch like it had been closed by someone who didn't know. It clicks 3 times. My stomach dipped. Mom treats that cabinet like a vault. Birth certificates, tax returns, the original deed to this house she worked 40 years to pay off. I told myself to breathe. Maybe she'd asked a neighbor to grab her insurance card. Maybe Evan had used a spare key and forgot to lock it. I pulled the drawer open. Inside, in a new manila folder, was a crisp document titled Deed. The grantee new owner line listed 2 names. Not my mom's, Evan and Claire. Their names clean as a knife. I stared long enough for my eyes to water. The date stamp was 3 days ago. Mom hadn't been out of the hospital in 3 days. She could barely hold a spoon 3 days ago. There was a notary stamp with a phone number in tiny print. I wrote it down. My hands shook so hard I had to steady them on the desk. I called the notary from the front porch because the air in the office felt used up. I said I was following up on a family signing. The notary remembered. Yes, the signer was quiet, but her son said this was temporary while she recovered. She had ID, we checked it, and she consented. Quiet, temporary. I could hear Claire saying those words like they were a lullaby. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I took photos of every page, closed the cabinet, turned the lock until it clicked 3 times, and drove back to the hospital with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my gums. Mom was asleep when I got there. Her hair was flattened on one side, her mouth slightly open, the way sick people sleep when their bodies are working so hard to heal. I sat there and watched the monitor blink. I told myself I would not blow up her world if there was another way. Fighting in court would break her. She despises conflict. My job is not to make her life harder. My job is to keep her safe. So I did what they did. I followed the paper. The next morning, I went to the county recorder's office. Property records are public. The clerk typed in Mom's address, and up popped the transfer, 2 tidy names replacing one. I asked for certified copies of the new deed and the prior deed with Mom as sole owner, $10 each. The clerk did not care about my shaking hands. Paper does not care if you're crying. I wasn't done. I went to Mom's bank, the one with the safe deposit box she uses for old jewelry and anything she thinks is too important for home. I didn't touch her accounts. I didn't try. But I asked for the access log for the box. The manager printed it. My brother had been there twice in the last 30 days. He'd never been before this year. The neighbor, Mrs. Patel, supplied the missing piece because there's always someone watching the street. She said a mobile notary came to the house. She saw Evan at the kitchen table with papers. She saw Claire fussing with Mom's sweater like a mother bird stuffing feathers into a nest. She heard Evan say, "Just sign here, and I'll handle the paperwork." Mrs. Patel's eyes were wet when she told me. She looked so tired, she said. I should have knocked. That evening, I sat by Mom's bed and waited for her to wake up. When she did, I showed her the certified copy of the new deed. I asked, "Do you remember signing this?" She blinked at the page, then at me, and said, "I thought I was authorizing them to pay the property tax if I went back in." Her fingers trembled. Did I give them the house? I told her the truth. She turned her face toward the window and started to cry. "I trusted them," she whispered. "I trusted my own son. I told her we could fix it without court. As long as she was of sound mind, which she was, and she wanted her house back, She could sign a new deed, transferring it back to herself. That sentence sounds like magic. It isn't. It's just the same system used honestly. I found the exact same deed form Evan used and filled in Mom's name as the owner again. I paid a mobile notary to come to the hospital. Mom sat up, read every line twice, and signed with a firm, careful hand. The notary stamped it. I drove it to the recorder's office like it was a newborn. They recorded it while I stood there and watched the stamp go down. Oh, new chain of title. Back to the name that built it. I wish that were the end. It wasn't. 2 days later, Evan called me with a voice so calm it was a threat. "You went behind our backs," he said. "You undermined what Mom wanted." I asked him to repeat what he thought she wanted. He said, "For responsible people to handle things." I said, "Then why did you need her house?" He called me dramatic. He told me he'd talked to someone about my interference. I said, "You exploited a sick woman. If you want to talk to someone, talk to your conscience." He hung up. Claire texted a paragraph about misunderstandings and family unity. She wrote, "We only did what any loving children would do." I typed, "Loving children don't stand to benefit." Then I deleted it. She thrives on written spin. I didn't feed it. I wasn't naive enough to think the deed was their only move. I started checking for the rest. I logged into Mom's utility accounts. Someone had already added a third-party contact to the electric bill. Not me. I checked her homeowner's insurance. Her mailing address had been switched to Evan's place out of state. I logged into USPS Informed Delivery, the feature that emails you scans of incoming mail. Her account had been created with an email I didn't recognize. I froze her credit with the big three agencies. I added voice passwords to her bank and cable. I set up account alerts that pinged my phone for every change. Securing someone's life is a second job. It shouldn't have to be. But here we were. The next twist came from the county again. I went back online to make sure the re-recorded deeds stuck. While I was there, something else popped up. A power of attorney document had been recorded a month earlier, naming Evan as Mom's agent. Broad authority. That explained the safe deposit box visits. I took the certified copy to the hospital and asked Mom if she remembered signing it. She shook her head. "He brought me a stack of papers for just in case," she said. "I got overwhelmed. I didn't read." We fixed that too. Mom executed a new document revoking any prior authorizations. She wanted no agent. "If I need one," she said, "you'll be there. Not as my boss, as my witness." I smiled and said, "As your kid." We made copies, gave one to her bank, and recorded the revocation with the county so the paper trail would be clean. In the middle of the mess, I still had to be a daughter. I brought her favorite soup in a thermos. I rubbed lotion into her hands. I put on an old radio show she loves, the kind with a throaty narrator and clinking glasses in the background. She'd laugh and then drift off, and I'd sit there making lists on my phone of things to lock down next. Evan and Claire tried to get ahead of me with the family. Group text. Lots of passive voice. It was decided that, to protect Mom, we're concerned about the stress she's under. I wrote back, "Mom has revoked all prior authorizations and is the sole owner of her home. Please respect her decisions." Claire replied with a heart emoji, which is the digital version of a smile that doesn't reach your eyes. I set a boundary that felt like a cliff. Visiting hours were now posted on Mom's door, written in thick marker, only 2 visitors at a time. Evan and Claire would not be in the room with her alone. The nurse on the floor was a former Marine. I told her the short version. She nodded once and said, "Say less. Gate kept." There was a moment that almost broke me. I came back from the cafeteria with a tea and found Evan sitting at the foot of Mom's bed, talking softly. I stood in the doorway and listened. He was telling her how exhausting it was for him to fight me, how sad it made him that I was turning her against the family. Mom's face was tight. She said, "I don't like fighting." He said, "Then sign this." He had a new paper in his hand. I didn't scream. I walked in, stood between his pen and her hand and said, "We're done here." He said, "You can't keep me from my mother." I said, "I can keep you from her signature." He left with a flapping of indignation like a man in a movie whose hat blows off in the wind. On the way out, he kicked the trash can, which only made the nurse raise an eyebrow in a way that said she'd seen bigger men fold harder. Around that time, I realized I needed a witness outside the bloodline. I called my Aunt Mom's sister, who lives 3 hours away. She arrived with a small suitcase and a face like a storm cloud. She is not soft. She hugged Mom, then sat me down and said, "Tell me everything in order." I did. She asked questions like a detective, including the one I was avoiding. What if they file something again? I said, then we file back. She nodded, then we file back. Midway through this saga, I'm gonna say one thing like a friend. If stories like this help you spot the red flag sooner, hit subscribe. I wish I'd heard one before this started. The next beat was an ugly one. USPS informed delivery pinged my phone. A piece of mail addressed to Mom from the tax office had been redirected due to change of address. Not to my house, not to the hospital, to a P.O. box I didn't recognize. I went to the post office with printouts. The clerk confirmed a change of address had been filed online by a family member. I asked them to cancel it and mark the account as in-person changes only. They did. I learned that mail theft isn't always stealing from a box. Sometimes it's rerouting the river. I changed every password we had. I added, do not disclose PINs by phone. Notes to her accounts. I put a bright sticky inside the front door. No signatures when sick. We will not decide today. It felt dramatic. It's astonishing how many bad decisions happen because a pen is closer than a nap. Claire sent me a 26-line email about bridging perspectives that boiled down to this. Why not just leave it like we arranged? Mom would be free of responsibility. They would manage it for her good. You know how people say snakes hiss? Claire's hisses are grammatically correct. I asked myself the hard questions. Was I projecting old sibling stuff onto current facts? Had I decided Evan was the villain and bent all the evidence to fit? I replayed each step. The unlocked drawer, the neighbor, the notary who said temporary, the access logs, the change of address, the utility accounts, the POA recorded behind my back. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not careless. The pattern was a pattern even if I hated it. The confrontation no one wanted finally landed in our laps over Sunday dinner at my parents' house, because Mom asked for it and I would still walk barefoot across glass if she asked me even now. I made a roast. I set the table. Evan and Claire arrived on time with a bouquet and faces like they were auditioning for Best in Show. We ate in careful bites. The air felt like static. After dessert, Mom folded her hands and said, I want my children to say what they need to say. She is still a librarian. She knows how to call order in a loud room. Evan went first. He said the word, we, a lot. We were scared. We were acting in Mom's best interest. We didn't think you had the bandwidth, he said. Temporary 3 times in one sentence. Claire added a soft chorus. It was so much work. We were trying to help. You're making this personal. I said, it is personal. It's a house. It's the place where we learned to read and where Mom cried behind the pantry door the day Dad lost his job and where she taped our spelling words to the fridge. It's not a portfolio asset. It's the roof over the only woman in this story who never treated any of us like a burden. Evan said, you don't own morality. I said, you don't own this house. Mom took a breath that seemed to come from the soles of her feet. I am not helpless, she said. If I ever need help, I will ask for it. I will ask for it with clarity, not in pajamas. Not when I'm on medicine that makes me forget what time it is. I love you, but you will not take what I built and call it love. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Evan stared at the tablecloth. Claire's cheeks flushed a pretty, practiced shade of regret. She said, we can fix this. Mom said, it's already fixed. Then she looked at me. I would like the fireproof box you told me about. I said, it's in my closet. It's yours. After they left, Mom and I washed dishes in a silence that felt like a truce with the day. She said, I raised 2 strong kids. One of you uses strength to protect. One of you uses it to rearrange the furniture and call the room improved. I dried a plate and said, you raised 3 strong people, you included. She smiled with her mouth closed, the way she does when she's trying not to cry. I wish I could tell you, Evan apologized. He didn't. What he did was go quiet and strategic, which is scarier. I kept checking the county site once a week. I checked the voter roll to make sure no one had monkeyed with Mom's registration, because identity theft can start anywhere. I checked her pharmacy profile to make sure no one had activated mail order meds. I set phone contacts to ring through to me if a care manager called. I learned the sound of my own alert tone in my sleep. Then we got lucky in the stupidest way. The notary who'd stamped Evan's deed, this is the same one who told me Mom was quiet, called me after work hours. They said they'd received a complaint from another family about pressure signings and were reviewing past files. They asked, did your mother sign in front of 2 witnesses in addition to me? I said, "No, just you." They sighed. "That's fine, depending on the form used. But best practice is two." I wanted to check. The way their voice changed told me something was shifting under their feet. Maybe someone else had reported Evan. Maybe the universe was finally bored of him. The last twist came like a slow dawn. Mom got stronger. She came home. We set up her pillbox like it was a military parade. She started walking to the corner and back with a neighbor every morning. She taped a list to the fridge. If it's a big decision, we wait 48 hours. No exceptions. She kept a small notebook by the phone to write down anyone who called and what they asked for. She stopped apologizing for saying, "Let me think about it." Evan did what people do when they lose an obvious lever. He tried to find a subtle one. He sent holiday photos. He sent links to articles about how to help aging parents, with the words, "just thinking of you," underlined by the subtext of control. Claire liked 3 of my Instagram posts in a row, and then DM'd me a recipe for an herb rub like we were ever going to stand next to a stove and laugh again. I didn't block them. I didn't need to. Distance is a password too. Here is what I learned. The part I hope lands in your bones. Family theft doesn't always look like someone breaking a window. Sometimes it looks like someone carrying a tote bag and a smile, nudging a pen across a table while saying, "This is temporary." They count on your shame. They count on your love. They count on you hating conflict more than they love what they're taking. You can love someone and still lock your cabinet. You can love someone and still say, "No, not today." You can love someone and still reverse a paper they filed when you were exhausted and they were hungry. I took the deed back without going to court. I used the same office, the same forms, the same blue ink. I did it while being polite to a clerk who did not care about my story and did not need to. It was not dramatic, it was not loud, it was just correct. If this sounds familiar, I'm sorry. I wish it weren't. If it doesn't, I hope it never does. But if you want to hear more stories that help you spot the pattern sooner, tap subscribe. I promise to keep it honest, PG-13, and on your side. I'll end with the simplest moral I can say out loud without my voice shaking. Love with boundaries is still love. Love without boundaries is access. Somebody in your family will always prefer the second one because it's easier. Choose the first one anyway. Choose the kind that protects the person you're loving, even if the person is you. Protect yourself. General information only, not legal advice. Laws and procedures vary by state. For guidance on your situation, consult a licensed attorney. Consider the following. Consider keeping originals of property documents in a secure, fire-resistant lockbox with certified copies stored separately from the property they concern. Digital scans, no sensitive numbers visible, can help for quick reference. Periodically review your county's property records for your name and address. Set calendar reminders and watch for unexpected change of address notices or third-party additions on utilities or mail. If you're unwell or feel pressured to sign, pause 48 hours, have a trusted person present, and verify the request by calling the institution using a number you look up yourself. Stay safe.